Very interesting when I talk to folks here. You no longer have a situation where you have a school board that is running one school system where all of the schools in the city are under that particular school system.
Right.
What is it now?
So there are direct state-run schools. There's a local school board for schools that the local school board was allowed to keep control of, which is about 7 schools. And then 60% of our students attend charter schools. I think there's somewhere of maybe 40 different charter operators, which means
charter schools are falling under whose control?
It's complicated. It falls under the state. Ultimately, the state has.
So the state has control of those charter schools. Do critics have a valid complaint when they say there are far too many decision makers involved, and it's not really clear who's in charge of what, who's doing what, and can you adequately measure progress of students in the school district with all the different hands in the pot?
It is unclear. It's extremely messy. Nowhere else in the country do you have 60% of the schools being run by charter schools. So, yes, it's messy. It's confusing. Educators themselves may not be able to explain what's going on, let alone parents. So I think part of our challenge as a city is helping people to understand the messiness of it in a way that allows parents, for example, to make informed decisions. But absolutely, you can measure progress. All of our public school students are subject to state testing. And so we know, for example, that we have, less than half of our schools compared to pre-Katrina are academically unacceptable. So we know that there's progress happening. It's hard to compare pre-storm, post-storm, but we know for certain, based on our accountability system, that there are less failing schools, and that's a good thing.
You're also dealing with a situation where you pretty much lost half of the student population, correct?
That's correct. That's correct. And we're not under either system. We're a private Catholic school. Our structure is still the same, but within our structure, we've lost a lot of schools, primarily because of socioeconomic issues. Parents not being able to pay tuition, schools were devastated, etc. The other issue that sometimes becomes confusing is also funding. If I'm not mistaken, the federal government gives the pool of money to one agency. They don't recognize 4 public agencies, they recognize one. And I believe that's the original Orleans Parish school system. So funds will be channeled through them and then dispersed to others. So there's still some confusion.
Now, Tyra used the word messy. Right. To sort of describe this, but I also hear from people who say, look, it was beyond messy prior to Katrina, so let's not act like that was, the most coherent system that was in place. Your perspective in terms of where we stand, and also where do parents fit in this? Are you seeing more parental involvement? Are you seeing a different focus when it comes to education of children in this city by decision makers, by also parents?
Certainly it's messy when you look at it from a parental perspective, but you got to realize the structural changes that are in place require now parents to apply to a school. Right. And so parents are now responsible for their own children's education. So they have to report to a school, they have to talk to a principal. That may not have occurred in a previous system. And so while it may have been a default for you to go to a school across the street, it removed the levels of parental engagement that is needed to accelerate learning.
Dr. Perry, you authored a number of different studies really comparing,
Right.
what was taking place pre-Katrina. How dire was it? I mean,
well,
somebody at home watching saying, okay, I know what's happening in my school district, but how dire was it?
First of all, you're in a state that historically ranks 49th or 50th in the country in terms of educational output. Then as a district, we're the second to last performing district in 2004 before the storm. And so really, when we look at growth after a storm, there's really only one way to go but up. And so I think the attention that we're putting on schools, we're certainly seeing growth. The number of failing schools have almost been cut in half. The number of students who are now deemed satisfactory has more than doubled. But there are some difficulties in comparing the two because, again, we have different populations. They're in different school types. We're seeing growth from the storm on.